All right. I'd like to call to order the January 3rd meeting of the Planning Board, Town of Westborough. We have a few of us here tonight because we have Mark on Zoom and Jim on Zoom, both one with COVID and one exposed to COVID. And John Gelschus will not be here this evening. So Mark is attending by Zoom, and Jim. So we're waiting for him, but in the meantime, we've got some housekeeping things to do. I think we might as well do those. The first thing would be the minutes for December 6th and December 20th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any comments or changes? Could I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay.
So I think because we're remote, we have to do roll call votes for the night. I could be wrong on that, but
Do that's not a problem. Let's just do this. All right, John,
Yes, approve.
Peter,
Yes.
Mark,
yes, to approve.
to approve. So the minutes are approved. The other thing, did everybody have a chance to take a look at the calendar proposed for the coming year? Are there any comments or questions on that in particular? It looked all right to me. I know some of them are right after holidays, but perhaps the best thing to do at this point is to leave it, and if we need to change it, depending on people's plans, we can do so. So this is just for information. So our next meeting is the 17th, which is the day after Martin Luther King Day, but generally people are here at that time.
And I think I noted the school break times. Typically, we stay away from those.
February 21st is
That's
school break.
the week of that.
Right.
April 18th is the spring break. And then also noted July 4th, we'll have to change.
Right.
Yeah, I know I'm gonna have a conflict in April.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't think February will be a conflict yet, but we could.
Why doesn't everybody
look
look at their calendars, and at the next meeting, we can make a decision if we want to change the dates in February in any way.
Yeah, the 21st I would want to change probably.
Okay.
School vacation.
All right, so that means it would either have to be the 14th or the 28th.
We probably shouldn't do the 14th because my wife would kill me.
All right. And shall we tentatively set that for the 28th of February then?
Yeah. That works.
Sure.
Okay. That seems straightforward enough. Okay. All right, why don't we move ahead? Jim still has...
I'm sorry, Hazel, do you want to look at April as well? Just because I know I'm going to have a conflict that vacation week.
Oh, April 18th, so that would be 4 and 7, that'd be 11th or the 25th.
So March is well, I mean, yeah, I either way, it doesn't matter to me.
My inclination would be to wait until maybe March, beginning of March, to make a decision on that, seeing what we're going to have in the agenda.
Sure.
Because it would
That's
either
fine.
have to be the, as I said, the 11th or the 25th. And therefore, if we're going to see that we're going to have a light agenda, that may depend on which date we would pick.
Okay, that's fine with me. We'll bring it up again.
Wait till then and see what the story is on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim texted me, he is having problems with his internet, so we might as well move forward with
Okay.
the rest, and he's just going to keep trying
Yeah,
to connect.
April will, Kristen, will wait on April till February, till March.
Change the February.
We changed the February one to the 28th. And then in March, we'll make a decision on April, depending on what we're going to have with the agenda. Okay, I'm going to move the agenda around slightly and ask Christie to talk to us about the town planner job description.
Hello.
Good evening.
Christy Williams, Town Manager. I think you have in your packet a copy of the job description for the town planner. We always revisit job descriptions when a position is becoming vacant. In this case, the last time we updated the job description was 2012, so it was definitely due. Our assistant town manager, Kim Foster, pulled town planner job descriptions from several communities and gave some changes. And then we did run those by Jim Robbins as well as Mark and Hazel for their input. So you have a marked up version, and then you also have the clean version. Some things that are added in here are references to sustainability, the climate action plan. Let's see, we talk about the master plan implementation being important. We've listed a lot of the things, a lot of the committees where the town planner represents the town. So I don't know if you have any questions. The typical process is that we would create this draft. In this case, we come to you and we're looking for a vote to recommend approval by the select board. The select board is the approving authority for the job descriptions. Assuming that you're prepared to approve this tonight, that would help us in terms of posting the position because we use the job description to post the position. And then we would put it on the select board agenda for January 10th.
So you'd look to bring this before the board on their next meeting if we
Yes.
approve it tonight?
Yep.
Jim, do you have any comments on this? I know you had a chance to look at it.
Thanks, Hazel. I made some comments, and Christie has incorporated those into the clean copy.
And Mark?
Yeah, my only comment was, I know the clean version came out to us recently. I talked with John Gelsich about it, and he didn't really have a chance to review it. He didn't see, have any suggestions to it. But since it's not going to the select board until the 10th, I think it'd be, if he sees something by the end of this week, maybe he could bring it to Christie's attention or my attention. I'll forward it to Christie. But I think we should move forward with it the way it's written. I think it was a well-researched and well-written job description. I only had a couple of small changes.
Yeah, I only had one small change. Other than that, it was fine with me, I thought, and I think covered things very well. John, did you have any comments on it? You haven't had a chance to really look at it.
Yeah, I haven't really had a chance to look at it, but if select board's the one who approves it, then if there's any questions I have, I can follow up. Just looking at it real quick, is it typical not to put a salary associated with the position?
Yes, we don't put salaries on the job description. It'll be in the posting. That job code, that S7, points to our classification plan and then back to our salary plan, which gets updated annually.
Okay,
Yep.
Great, thank you.
All right, Peter?
I'm all set.
Maybe the thing to do is that at this point we could approve it, and then if there are any comments, John, either you have or Peter has or John Gelsher has, we can get those to Christie's. I think if anything else, they probably would be minor. I think the major information has been in the job description already, and I didn't see any need to change anything in there specifically myself.
Okay.
All right. Mark, do you have any other comments?
No, I think I agree with you 100%.
Okay. Could I have a motion then to approve the job description as presented by Christie?
I move to approve the job description for the Westborough Town Planner as presented to us this evening.
Second? Peter, do you want to second it?
Oh, second, sir.
All right. Okay, well, let's take a,
I thought your second was when you said second.
all right. John,
Yep, I approve.
Peter,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes to approve.
and myself, yes to approve. Okay, thank you, Christy, and thank you for pulling this all together for us.
Sure. Do you want me to
Appreciate
stay
it.
for the search committee?
Excuse me?
Do you want me to stay for the
Yes,
search
and then
committee?
now we'll discuss the search committee.
thanks.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if we've approved the job description, we'll need a search committee. So I think everyone has in front of them a copy of the proposed search committee. I had no questions about this myself. It looked like a good cross-section. I was particularly pleased to see Chris Pan on it because I think that having a director of a department is very important, particularly in the public works area. So I was very pleased to see that. John, did you have any comments?
Yeah, only having been on the board for almost a year now, I guess my question is, why do we have a select board representative on the search committee if it's a planning board?
I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. I think that somebody from the select board sits on all the search committees, do they not, for major positions within the town?
Yeah, typically a select board member would sit on the search committee. So the way that the search committee works, and you can probably see this from the motion, is the search committee would review the applications and then do the initial round of interviews, potentially do some sort of assessment, and then the planning board would interview the finalists. And so you can set the number of finalists that you want to see, and then you would ultimately make the appointment. So that's why we had just recommended the 2 members. Select board, sort of given their work with the planning board and the planning department, we thought was appropriate.
Okay.
So the way this is written here, are you saying that we have to decide between all 7, or we can do more or less? Is that what we're going on?
This was a recommendation that I had provided to Mark and Hazel, but certainly is your decision.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we want an odd number.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, my only question was recommending a minimum of finalists. At this point, I would not like to put a particular number in it at this particular time, only because maybe we'll have 4 candidates, maybe we'll have 2 candidates, so I'm putting a number down. I don't want to hold us to a particular number. So that would be my only question about that. I would just say recommending the finalists for the planning board's consideration.
And just so you are aware, we would be required to recommend a minimum of 2, but there
Right,
could
yeah.
be more, so.
Well, we could say recommending a minimum of 2 finalists, I guess, which would leave it open if we wanted 3 or 4 finalists. Leave it at
Hazel,
that
can I
way.
make a couple comments?
What?
Can I make a couple comments?
Yeah, I'm just going to call on you. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Hazel. I'm sorry to interrupt. So, yeah, the way Christie gave us a draft motion, and the draft motion is phrased as a minimum of, and then we fill in that blank. And I think we should say a minimum of 2, and that would give the search committee the discretion to send us 3 or 4 or more than 2 finalists. But since by law it has to be a minimum of 2, I think that's an obvious cutoff. I hope we get 20 candidates, but you know, we as a board certainly don't want to be interviewing them. That's what the search committee is going to do. As far as the makeup of the search committee, I do think the 7-member committee makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like I monopolize a lot of these appointments, and I'm not trying to shirk any duty here, but I know that John Galsich was interested in serving on this committee, and I'd be more than willing to step aside for him, or any other member of the board if there's other people interested in serving. You know, I do have a lot going on, and we all do. So I just honestly feel like I end up on a lot of these committees, and I don't want to be, you know, accused of too many committees. So.
Perhaps at this point, I'd like to leave the committee as such, but there isn't any reason why we couldn't change it, isn't there? Before it, I mean, we could, since it probably, I would think any discussion we might have, we don't have the full board here, which bothers me on that. I'm wondering whether if this is a motion that we've made, but this would not preclude us, for example, if we wanted to change the composition at our next meeting.
Yeah, and so my thought on that, Hazel, was that instead of naming specific names, we could just say that the committee have 2 members of the planning board on it. And then
Leave that
all
open.
of us could go back and assess whether, we wanted to serve on that or not. We could have John's input at the next meeting, and then, as a group, we could make a decision which 2 will serve on that search committee. And again, I'm more than willing to do it. I just feel like, I should step aside on some of these things.
Okay, that sounds like a reasonable way to do it. I would like to serve, so I would like to stay on it as a representative of the planning board. But I think that's a good idea. If we just put 2 members, that leaves it open, and then we can do it. What do you see as the timing on when is the notice going to be published, and what do you see as the timing as to when the committee would begin its work?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking Christy.
Okay.
So typically for a department head position, we would leave it open for a month. So we would get the posting out immediately based on the job description. So the search committee wouldn't necessarily need to meet for that. And then once we receive applications, then we would start meeting with the search committee to discuss, to review the application, to have, discuss interviews. A lot of that can be done in executive session using a search committee. And then I think that we would have a goal of trying to get finalists in front of you by your second meeting in March, if not before, sometime, one of your meetings in March.
Okay, is it typical in a search committee to send out questions, for example, in response to people's applications? Do people ever do that? I was just wondering because when we were, for example, working on the master plan committee, we sent out some questions for people to answer. Is that typically done in situations like this or not?
It can be done. I think we've had some positions where we've sent out questions ahead of time. Typically what we would do is we would narrow down to a number of candidates just based on, the quality of the applications in front of us. Then we would do the initial round of interviews, narrow it down a little bit further, and then typically we do some sort of assessment, which would include maybe some writing, which response to questions. Some of the things that we've done for other department head positions is a 90-day plan. So we ask the applicants to give us what they would do in their first 90 days, things like that. So there is that assessment piece. I think that's what you were asking.
Okay, I just think I like to see written questions go out only because I think it gives the search committee something else to work with than just looking at resumes. I mean, resumes are written differently by everybody, and you may not get the full flavor or feeling of that person just from reading a resume, which they send out to everyone. So I just find this sometimes gives you a better idea of what the candidate's ideas are and things. So, okay, that's something that we look at later, but that's something I'd kind of like to see. Jim, do you have any comments on this?
I have no comments. Specifically, I do think having questions when you get to the point where you want to reach finalists, like if the search committee identified 3 or 4 people that they thought should be interviewed, the interview should consist of a standardized question. Christy mentioned one, a 90-day plan. There might be others. I can think of some scenarios that planners should consider.
So sometimes we ask for, as part of that assessment, we give scenarios and then we get written responses. All of that would come to the planning board in preparation for your finalist interviews. And we would help draft questions that the planning board could ask, because Jim's correct that you should ask a standard set of questions.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Mark, do you have any comments?
I don't. I think we should, establish the committee. As a board, we can decide at our next meeting which two planning board members will represent us on that committee. And then presumably the select board on Tuesday will approve the job description and we can get that posted next week. I just want to make sure that we get somebody in place, right when Jim leaves so that we're not left, if possible.
Yeah.
And I know Jim will probably still help me out after he's gone because I have his cell.
I hope so.
I might change my phone number.
Ready for a motion then?
Yeah.
I just have one question. I'm familiar with most everyone on this list, with the exception of Lester Hensley.
Lester,
So I
I
can
just don't
fill
know who
that in
that
for
is.
you, John.
Lester
Lester was a member of the planning board for 5 years, served as chair for 3 years, and was recently chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I can certainly say that he will be a valuable member on that committee. So I think it's good to have somebody from that Master Plan Committee, as well as his experiences on the planning board.
Yeah, I think
Does that
the
help?
planning board his experience on the planning board would be very helpful, just over the years. And that, Christy, you had something you wanted to say?
I was just going to add that one of the reasons that we thought that, in addition to Lester's experience on the planning board and economic development committee, he, as the chair of the master plan committee, the master plan, obviously, it was a very large public engagement process and document. And so in terms of understanding kind of the marching orders for the new planner over the next 20 years, Lester will have a good understanding in addition to others who served on that committee.
Great to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I think he'd be a very valuable member because I worked with him very closely. So I'm delighted to see that.
Yeah, and also for John's information, through Hazel, through you, for John's information, Lester was also the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. He was the second chairman of the committee following its inception, and he was chair for about 5 years. So he understands, I think, all phases of development and planning for the community.
And he's a local businessman.
Love it.
All right, Peter?
I move to establish a town planner search committee for the purpose of evaluating candidates for the position of town planner and recommending a minimum of 2 finalists for the planning board's consideration for appointment, and further that this committee will be composed of the following: 2 planning board members, Lester Hensley, select board representative, Christy Williams, Chris Bryant, and Fred Leonardo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
We're ready to vote. Any other comments? All right. Peter?
Yes.
John?
Yes to approve.
Mark?
Yes to approve.
Myself, yes to approve. Thank you, Christy.
Thanks.
Thanks, Christy.
All right, we'll go back to our regular agenda, which the next item on there is the continuation of the public hearing and decision for special permit number 2022-3, Stone Inc. at 80 Turnpike Road. Marshall, good evening.
Good evening.
If you could introduce yourself and...
Mark Malegny with me.
Okay, and Mark. All right. You've had a chance to review the draft I think Jim sent out.
I did, and I sent a few comments back in the track changes. I don't know whether the other members have seen it, but I did discuss it with Jim. He's here and he can share his comments. I don't know if the other board members have seen my comments on it. just a few track changes.
Christie, do we,
Is this the one?
The second one.
Yeah,
The first one's Lisa's comments, the second one is
okay.
it's Marshall's response to Lisa's.
All right.
Right, yeah.
Jim, let me turn this over to you for comments on this and discussion with Marshall on it.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm having trouble with my signal, so if I cut out, please understand it's only because for some reason my internet has been spotty today. If you can't hear me, Kristen, send me a text or something. I have my phone sitting here beside me. So Marshall did send me a red line copy. There, he made an adjustment to the appropriate side of the building. I had referenced the rear for the addition of 2 garage bay doors, and he added the westerly side. It is the westerly side of the building instead of the rear. That's fine. He also changed the word soundproofing to sound insulation, which I am totally fine with because, as you know, it's impossible to stop all sound. So it's difficult to make something soundproof. Instead, he said to provide materials to provide fire, thermal, and sound insulation on the south side of the building, facing the abutting residential neighborhood. That's condition 3. Condition 4, he again suggested removing the word proofing and make it sound reduction measures in the second line of condition 4. Sound reduction measures at preventing noise nuisance to the neighboring residential neighborhood. Number 5, I was unaware of this, that the property already had a variance for its ground sign. Number 5, as I wrote it, said any signage associated with permitted use shall conform to the requirements of the Westborough zoning bylaw. Marshall appropriately added, or be located in accordance with a sign variance granted to allow a ground sign within 35 feet of the front lot line. Now I'm going to share my screen here. 1 second. Let me attempt to do that so you can see that. Can you see my screen? No. Nope.
But I think we all have the red line copy.
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay, well then I will stop trying to bring that.
We all
copy
have the
up.
red line copy.
Also then, he, on the final condition of non-performance, he added chapter 40A, the A fell off. Thank you, Marshall. It is chapter 40A, not chapter 40. That's all for Marshall comments. We additionally had comments from the town engineer. Does everyone have those, or should I attempt to bring those up?
Yes, we have them. It's before them.
Okay. So if you're looking at the town engineer's comments, she deleted a redundancy in the first line, and then on page 2, condition 10, lighting, item C, she had a question to me, and I discussed this with Marshall. Our standard is 20 feet, and he's fine with that instead of 25. That's a keystroke error on my part. You can see condition 11, Lisa added quite a bit here having to do with building permit approval and the review of the stormwater management plan and an operation and maintenance plan, as well as discussing location to be identified on the plan for snow storage. And then lastly, at the bottom of the last page after condition 13, she wanted to remind the applicant that their proposed modification to the on-site utilities, that could be water, sewer, electric, that could be any of the utilities, are subject to the engineering department's review and approval. That would be prior to building permits. So I would insert that as a new condition.
So that would be
And I
number
discussed
4.
that with Marshall.
That would be number 14 then?
Well, I would probably make it a new number 12 and move 12 and 13 down to 13 and 14.
Okay. So move it up to 12, and then modifications would become 13, and non-performance 14.
Correct.
Marshall, do you have any comments other than that?
I am fine with all of those.
Can we just confirm, what did we agree with for the lighting, 20 or 25 feet?
It's 20 feet.
Okay.
20 feet.
Additionally, I had spoken with Marshall after conversation with the Department of Public Works Director about sewer capacity, excess sewer capacity. And we had talked about this informally during a site visit to the property that the town wishes to discuss with the owner of the property the possibility of determining any excess sewer capacity they have in their connection permit, and if possible, that the town recapture any excess capacity for future allocation. I know Marshall has some feeling about that on behalf of his client, and he would like to explain what he thinks to the board.
Okay, Marshall?
Thank you very much. We are not opposed to the concept. The only thing I do want to point out, just as a reminder to everybody, this building, in the last 2 users, one has been a manufacturing and production facility, and then most recently it was a school or classroom for some kind of teaching there. As you may remember, a good portion of the top floor, that is technically the second floor, but as you walk in from the front of the building, it's the first floor, the back half is going to be removed so that it's now going to reduce the square footage of the building. Additionally, the type of fabrication and processing that Mark's company will use is a reclamation of the water that is used during the cutting process. Should Mark outgrow the building, or if Mark chooses not to continue his business there, or if he either in the future rents out the building or sells the building, we just want to be able to be certain that we won't be pushed back to a level where if he wants to go back to a full 2-story building with a floor across both levels, or a reasonable use for water, whether it be for manufacturing or schooling, or more probably the other choices of people who most recently looked at the building along with Mark. One was a health club and the other was a restaurant. We just want to make sure that we don't foreclose the possibility in the future, should he decide to sell or change the location of his business, that it couldn't be used for one of those uses, because that's what seems to be attractive to this location. So with that in mind, I understand that we're not absolutely committing to any gallonage today, but I would just like to go on the record and have some acknowledgement that we're happy to work with the town. The board certainly knows that I've worked on both sides, reducing and asking for increased capacity. And I think that's the nice thing about Westborough. You listen to the businesses that are here and try to help them out with their needs. So we're trying to do the same.
Jim, do you have any comment on that?
No comments. That sounds reasonable.
It sounds reasonable to me, I will say, and I understand you don't want to have a building that has conditions on it that would prevent it from being sold or used for another use. And that makes sense to me, and I'm sure that your client will be willing to work with the town on this.
Yes.
As we are trying to work with our sewer system and waste problems that we have as it is.
We understand.
John, do you have any comments?
I mean, if possible, I'd like to see it in writing as part of the decision.
See what in writing?
Well, I don't know what the language would state, but something that the applicant would work with DPW on providing some of that capacity back to the town.
So long as in the future, if needed, it would be available, something like that, John? I think
Something that works for both sides, but
And that's what I'm saying. If it
Yeah.
can work on both sides, whether it's in the decision or whether you want it in the minutes, however you decide, I think we're okay with that. We just don't want the decision to be one-sided, that we've agreed if we don't use it, that we lose it.
All right. Based on that, my initial reaction would be to, will it make a difference to you if we wait till the next meeting to approve this? Is that going to give you a problem?
I'm never going to say no to the board, but and I know we're in public, the attorney for the seller has been very pushy, which I've made known, and he wants us, each time there's an extension, there's more that we have to do.
Would you be amenable if, Jim, if you could draft some language that would go in to this? Would you be amenable on working with Jim to just put a paragraph in covering this particular situation, and we could approve it based on a paragraph to be added upon mutual compliance and discussion between? Jim, how would that work?
That works fine for me. I had already sent Marshall some thoughts in an email. I'm happy to do that further, to develop it a little bit more concisely, if the board would like that. I don't want to hold up the applicant's permit this evening. I think that, and I'll ask Marshall to respond to this, but I think that we're in agreement on what the concept is, what the parameter of that discussion would be. And the Public Works Director agrees with that as well. They don't want to direct the applicant to do anything because they understand no one has a crystal ball. They just want to discuss with them what the parameters might be for recapturing something in the future, if possible.
All right. I would be agreeable on that. Mark, do you have any
Yeah,
comment?
I don't think we really, to be honest, I'm really not sure what language we're going to come up with that A, would be at all binding, and B, to me, this would be an informal agreement between the landowner and DPW that, I don't think it's anything we can make a condition of this permit, because we really don't have, to me, a condition of the permit is something that we could, if they don't meet that condition, then we have the grounds to revoke the permit. And I can't see any language that we would put in here that would give us grounds to revoke the permit over this issue, because that sewer capacity has been, my understanding, that sewer capacity has been paid for already by a prior owner, and that capacity carries with the property. If they want to voluntarily agree to reduce it, that should be an informal discussion between them and DPW. I don't see how we can put any language in there as a condition of this approval. I don't necessarily agree with that.
in that case, I'm fine with moving forward the way it's written.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Peter?
making a decision tonight.
Yeah, I don't want to hold up the applicant, and I say we move forward.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I think we'll make sure that this is in the minutes. My only question was whether it could go in the preamble to this instead of under conditions of approval, but some acknowledgement in those first 5 paragraphs or first 4 paragraphs just a comment on it. I don't know whether that's feasible, Jim, or not, because therefore it would not be under conditions of approval. It would be under just the,
Yeah, I could put it under findings.
yeah.
Something that we recognize that the building has been allotted a sewer privilege capacity, and that the applicant and the town have discussed possibilities for working or redefining that allocation amount in the future.
Yeah, I think I'd feel, would that bother you, Marshall, to do it that way?
Let me just make a comment if
Sure.
I could. Until we did the Samuels project at Research Drive, and I've been permitting in this town for 40 years, I never even realized that during the permitting process that the applicant was granted an allocation. I have to be honest. And I think there were some people probably in town that did not know that either. And what we asked in that process was, could we go, and Fred was part of it, and Christy was part of it, Mark and Jim were both part of it, could we find out what the allocations are for a lot of the properties in town? And we were told that DPW has that. Mm-hmm. And with all the permitting that I've done in this town, I mean, Northborough and Westborough, the two towns I've done more in than any other town, I've never known a client to know what his allocation is. I just asked here, they don't know what's allocated for this building. So I would think that this is something that the planning board, maybe even with the process of a new planner coming in, working with DPW, ought to come up with set language that could be for all decisions, not just this one. And what we did on Samuels, and Mark and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, I think DPW went back as far as 20 years. I know it was more than 10 years. Yeah. And determined what was the allocation and what was the highest use and what was the average use. And the highest use, I think in almost every case, was less than the allocated use. And the average use was way below, like 60% or less. So it's hard for me to say, yes, we'll agree to reduce some, because I don't even know what they have. So to put it in this decision, I'm a little nervous about saying yes, because I don't know what we're agreeing to. I just asked our engineer, do you know what we have? The answer is no. If you want to put in the minutes that we've agreed that so long as the allocation is acceptable for this permitting and for the other potential uses that have expressed interest in this property, and you told me it was a health club and a restaurant because of the Route 9 location, I would be okay with that. But I think it's dangerous to do it on a case-by-case basis. I think it would be a good idea, having gone through Samuels, to look at it in every case and have a standard paragraph that you put in a decision. That's just my thought. I don't know how Jim and Mark feel about it, or Fred. They were all in those meetings.
Yeah, I think there was some discussion, because I think Chris was doing some research to try to figure out what the usage was, how it had been allocated, who had what, and try to work out some sort of a schedule, because I think that there was perhaps a lack of information in the entire town as to how the allocation had been or was being done. So I think you're right on that aspect of it. I mean, I would be comfortable going ahead with the way it is now, because I don't want to penalize one person to suddenly come up with something without a discussion and having essentially a policy of the planning board.
Yeah, I agree. And the applicant's also willing to work with us, and so I don't want to hold him up. So that's kind of my feeling on it. It seems like he's willing to work with the town. So I think that's enough in my opinion.
And Mark, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole sewer allocation thing does need, further discussion, some type of solution or policy moving forward that will protect the town as well as landowners' rights. I don't think we can solve it tonight or in the context of this decision. I would suggest that we move this forward as it's written with the edits that we made tonight, and make a note to meet with DPW and maybe council, maybe the town manager. I'm not even sure who we need to get involved with it, but we need to figure that out because sewer is becoming an issue in this town, and as a board, we need to do whatever we can to alleviate that or improve that situation. But I don't think it's going to happen in this decision.
Jim, do you have any other comments?
No, I agree with that. It's not going to happen in this decision. It should be a policy that's well thought out before it's applied at all.
Right. Then I believe we would first close the public hearing. Is that
You can either vote the conditions of approval and then close the public hearing, or close the hearing first. Generally, you close the hearing first. Just understand that once you do that, you can't take any more testimony.
all right? Are we ready to close the public hearing?
Yeah.
Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing on 80 Turnpike Road and a special permit approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Peter, your vote?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes to close.
And Hazel, yes to close. All right, now do we need to go through the conditions again, or have we done so, Jim?
I'm fine with it the way it is. It's your pleasure. I don't think you're going to learn anything new, but we can.
All right, could I have a motion to approve the special permit?
I move that the planning board approve the special permit for Stone Inc. at 80 Turnpike Road dated January 3rd, 2023, with any edits and/or additions made or referenced during this evening's planning board meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mark?
Yes to approve.
Peter?
Yes to approve.
John?
Yes to approve.
And I approve. Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy
Good
New
luck
Year
in your
to all of
business.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Now, I believe that the next item, 48 Flanders Road, has been adjourned. Continue to
Madam
next.
Chairman, you have a request by the applicant to continue discussion. They still have some work to do on the plan.
Okay. We don't need to vote on that, though, do we?
I would vote to continue the discussion per the request of the applicant. You have a motion in your package that I drafted for you.
I don't know. I don't have any motions. Peter, you got it? Okay,
Yeah, this is
Peter.
48 Flanders.
Yeah.
All right. I move that the planning board continue its discussion of the proposed preliminary plan for a residential subdivision at 48 Flanders Road to January 17, 2023, as requested by the applicant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Is anybody, Mark? Jim, do you have any
No
comments
comment.
on this?
This is not a public hearing. The preliminary plan does not require a public hearing, but because the applicant requested it to give more time so they could provide information to answer the questions from the last meeting, they have requested the additional time. So it's customary in that case to vote to grant their request.
All right, we're ready to vote then? Mark?
Yes.
Yes to continue.
Yes to continue?
John?
Yes to continue.
And a yes to continue. All right, thank you. The Housing Choice Act, we have something due by the end of the month.
That is correct. Mark and I have been discussing this. Mark and I are both on the Housing Choice Subcommittee, as is Peter. We had a meeting with CMRPC a couple weeks ago, just before the holiday, to talk about the acquiring of some data to put into the map that we're required to provide DHCD when we submit our preliminary plan, our concept plan. There's also a form to be filled out that needs to be executed by the town manager. I had recommended to Mark, and I'm going to ask Mark to elaborate a little on this, that our committee reconvene and that we reach out to CMRPC to get the data we requested so that we can complete this in the next 2 weeks.
Mark, give some comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think that summarizes it. Jim is going to reach out to CMRPC. We had asked them, some specific questions that they were going to follow up and try and get us some research on so that we could move it forward. But generally, the action plan isn't binding. It's just a concept plan that we need to submit by January 31st, and then we can move forward with our typical zoning change procedures, and we'll all have a chance to look at it, public hearing, and then go to town meeting with it. Maybe next fall if it's ready, but we don't have to do any kind of zoning change till the end of 2024.
Right. The submission is due the end of January. We don't need to vote on or anything, do we?
I don't think so. I think that's the housing subcommittee's vote, and it's
okay.
And I'm not even sure we need to vote that. It's really just a form that's filled out by town manager.
Correct.
That again, there's nothing binding about it. It's just a concept, kind of general description of what we're doing and how we're going to move forward over the next 2 years with a zoning change.
So it's just, but it's a deadline that we're prepared to meet, and I understand you're moving ahead and the papers will be ready.
Yeah, we could fill it out now, but we would prefer to fill it out once we've gotten some of these questions answered. Just, again, we can fill it out now, but we might have to change. I mean, to be honest with you, our concept plan is going to get changed during the zoning process. I'm sure of it. It's nothing set in stone yet. Okay.
I just wanted to check in on that. Jim, have you got anything you'd like to bring up? That's the end of our agenda for tonight.
So on your next meeting, I'm going to request that the planning board release several escrow account deposits that were not used. I will have them for you at the next meeting. Also, future zoning articles, we're going to need to hold public hearings in February. One is for the recodification of our zoning bylaws. In a nutshell, we're going to be deleting entirely our existing zoning bylaw and replacing it with the new version that's been provided by General Code. They provided a draft to the town. Fred Leonardo and John were on that committee, as well as Justin Lundberg, the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We submitted our comments to their draft to them several weeks ago before the holiday. I'm waiting to hear back from them. As soon as I get it, you will get it to look at. But keep in mind that this is just a reorganization of the zoning. There's no new data. There's no new uses. After that, we will also have an article to change the authority for signage review in the zoning from the Historic Commission to the Design Review Board to be consistent with all the districts in the downtown. Because as you know, in the Downtown Planning Overlay District, any sign that is part of a project that includes more than just signage is currently approved by the Design Review Board. Anything that's only signage currently goes to the Historic Commission. And it's a bit confusing for applicants. And the Historic Commission has graciously said, why don't we just cede this authority to the Design Review Board, since they do both signage and other architectural approvals. So we're going to make that change as well.
Okay. Mark, anything else you'd like to bring up tonight?
No, nothing here.
All right. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Oh, sorry.
Is there anything that has to be said about the?
Oh, do we need to deal with the tie and bond contract for Gleason
No,
Road?
no, we don't. Hazel, we gave Jim the authority
Oh,
to
right.
sign those when they're ready to be
Yeah, you're right.
signed, so I don't think we need to address that at all.
Okay. All right. Did I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Mark?
Yes, to adjourn.
Peter?
Yes.
Slowly, just to
So
drag it.
enthusiastic there, Mark.
John? All right. Thank you, and thank you, Westborough TV. Stay well, you two. Hopefully,
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Mark, you
I'll be
won't get
back
it.
soon.
Jim,
All right,
you'll
have a
be
good
over
night,
it.
everyone. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.